That's interesting. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Depends on when you're watching the broadcast. But welcome to Glue Wednesday, the actual genesis of Glue Wednesday, by the way. Uh, 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 our main message will start in 5 minutes. But Glue Wednesday was born from the fact that the cliche, actually, not so much the fact, but the cliche that Wednesday is hump day. And so, therefore, but what that is actually, okay, there we go. What that is actually that Wednesday was the middle of a 5 day work day, a 5 day work week. So they called it hump day. And what I like to do is twist around the vocabulary and say, well, you know what? Wednesday is not really, everybody doesn't work Monday to Friday. So Wednesday doesn't have to be the hump day, but it is the middle of a traditional 7 day week. So it keeps the week end and the week beginning together. So Wednesday is the glue, and it brings us into a prayerful state. And that's why I call it glue, GLUE. God's love undoes everything. So if this is your first time with us, that's where it came from. But it also makes the point that we don't have a need to get over, which hump day was. We have a need to keep it together. And that's what we want to find ways to do. Stay positive and keep it together. So we've got less than 3 minutes before the message starts. If you need to go take a quick bio break or get yourself some coffee or something to drink and sip on, go do that because we start the message at 1 o'clock. But again, as we start to think about glue, think about God's love undoes everything, does not mean that it tears things apart, but that things that are torn apart, God's love will put them back together. And I've been doing this broadcast now for 3 years. I've upgraded it to glue Monday and Friday as well, based on when the pandemic hit. So, got a lot of glue coming at you. Because guess what? Don't we need to keep it together every day of the week? But we can go on and focus on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as good days to keep the glue together. Hey, what's up, Rich? I see the thumbs up. Okay, so it's good to see you. We've got less than 3 minutes for the message. Okay. So you still got time. I see we got people watching. And by the way, if you ever do a Facebook Live, or if you have are you thinking about doing one, what happens is when you go live, the first thing that happens is it says Facebook is building the audience. So it always sends out the message that you are on live. This is why I try to get on 5 minutes early. That's why you're hearing me do a countdown to when the message is going to start, because what it does is sends out an announcement to people. Sporty King is on live, and you may be doing something. You may be on my list of people that you say, yes, let me know when Sporty goes on live, but you may be in the middle of something and say, oh my God, okay, then yeah, let me finish it up. 5 minutes is usually a good amount of time for somebody to finish something up. So Facebook even recommends that you go on 5 minutes in advance. So that's why I always do that. So if you ever wonder why I'm doing shout outs and just talking at the beginning, that's my reason. It usually has also been where I got a chance for you to see some outtakes that I didn't do. We got less than a minute where you see me messing with the technology, or as I call it, learning the technology, because I'm tech functional, not literate. Hey, Annette, you the first one on. I'm gonna throw your name up there. And that's my barber, y'all. I'm coming, Annette. I'm coming. All right. And let me give you some technology here as well before we get into the message. I've had, like my sister said, how come my so-and-so's message got on there and mine's didn't? See, I control whose message goes on there. That's because I'm using this technology through called StreamYard, which you see up in the upper left-hand corner, and or right-hand corner for vision. And that allows me to control what gets on the stream. So, there's just a lot of technology going on. What's happening, Roger Carroll? It's just a lot of technology going on right now. And what we need to do is get a lot sharper at using it. So got you on the shout out there, but let's go. It's 1 o'clock. Let's get to this message. Woo, because I got some notes here. So I want to get through them and make this thing work for you. All right. But today I'm going to finish out my glue series. That's my GLUE series, where each of the the letters in the word. Uh-oh, did I print the wrong one? No, well, each each of the letters in the word glue was one of my focuses. So last Wednesday I did the G, Friday I did the L, Monday I did the U, and today I'm going to be doing the E. And what we do every broadcast, what I've been doing is I had people to put words in the feed that start with the next letter that we're going to feature. And then that way they get to become my co-authors. So on Monday, I said, if you've got a word that begins with the letter E that you want to get into the broadcast, put it in the thread. So here are the words that got put in the thread for me: egregious and essential. So those words, you'll end up hearing them in the message today. I won't say, oh, there's that word, but you'll hear those words mixed into the message. What that does is helps you become a better listener, because when you know what you're listening for, when it comes, you can react to it. Now, maybe you won't hear it as the person who didn't volunteer that word, but guess what? The person who volunteered that word would definitely be, oh, there's my word. Okay, that's how you can become a better listener, knowing what you're listening for, which also is a wider message in terms of knowing who you are and knowing if you've chosen the right messengers in your life, you know what message you're looking for. There's also a term called confirmation bias. We're hearing a lot about different types of biases, but confirmation bias is similar to research, where you want to hear something, you look for something that supports what you believe. And the reason it's called confirmation bias is even if what you believe is technically wrong or bad, you want to find that I gotta get an example that say, yeah, this is what I should do. So confirmation bias can go either way. It can go where you're looking to support some bad action, but it's also similar to being research, where you're looking to prove a good point and let it be helpful. So egregious and essential will end up in the message today. And our message today is everything. The last word in glue, Glue. God's love does everything, but my everything is EVERYTHING. Everything. And our featured, and each of those is going to be an acronym. Our featured poem will be "Thy Will Be Done" from my book, A Poet and Every Prophet. And if you like a copy of the poem, I want you to, with a complete electronic signature, I got a new email address for you. I want you to send your request to sporty@sportyking.com. If you like a copy of the poem, send it to sporty@sportyking.com. And if you like a copy of the book and a live personalized autograph, you're going to go to my website at sportyking.com. But let's look in your feed right now. Let me give you let's look in the scrolling line across the bottom right now, because here are the words that I put down for everything. First of all, what I'm going to do is give you a metamorphosis. We're going to change these negative words into positive words. So so God's love undoes everything. So here are some of the words that we need God's love to undo: evil, violence, egregiousness, regrets, trials, hatred, ignorance, negativity, and greed. Not the worst words in the world, but what I'm going to do is I chose those words to show you how God's love can overdo those. And we're going to overdo those words with empathy, value, excellence, recall, recollection, yourself, testimonies, happiness, insight, and nurturing. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to post those in the feed right now so that you can see them all. As we'll see, those are all the things that God's love will undo. And then I'm going to give them to you one at a time. So let's start out with the E. Empathy undoes evil. Because if you embrace that fact that empathy undoes evil, that everyone is going through something. See, everybody is going through something. Then you end up turning evil around to spell live. EVIL turned around is LIVE. You see, when you live, you don't have to put yourself in someone else's shoes. You don't have to put yourself in someone else's shoes. That's what empathy is about. I won't give you a biblical reference other than saying throughout the Bible, we find that you cannot put yourself in someone else's shoes. What you would, you know, for instance, what would you have done if you were in Moses's sandals? Now, you saw the movie and you still don't know what you would have done if you had been in Moses's sandals. Imagine what the Israelites had to think about, okay? Yet also imagine that there's a Moses in among you and in you. There's a Moses in you and there's one in your life. Someone willing to lead against all odds. But take off Moses' sandal and then put on Martin Luther King's shoe. And then what you do is you'll feel how both of them, Moses and Martin, saw the mountaintop. They looked out across their mountain. They ignored the nonsense and they were unselfish enough to say, I believe in you because God wants you to go through something to live. Turn that evil around to live. God wants you to go through something to live. It's not going to be a smooth and easy path, but it is going to be your path. And that's where the empathy comes in. I may not have been in your shoes. I don't know exactly what you've been through, but I sat in your row and I still sit in your row because all of us are going through something. And as we're going through something, it becomes hard to empathize with what someone else is going through. Because we say, well, where are you? Well, hey, yeah, but I'm going through such and such. And so it's tough. So I'm not saying empathy is an easy thing, but empathy will outdo evil every single time. And that takes us to the V, because value outdoes violence. See, the protest chant that we're hearing is Black Lives Matter, which means put them on the list that says white lives matter, yellow lives matter, red lives matter, all lives matter. All the chant is saying is put them on the list. Put Black Lives Matter on the list. It's not asking you to take anybody's name off the list, but this is where value has to outdo violence, because we get caught up and then actually the question we have to ask is, why should you have to put Black lives on your list? Why should you have to put them on your list? Why weren't they there already? See, even if, as we hear people say, but all lives matter, but are they all on your list? It's about you. And we're going to see that when we can get to the letter I for insight. Yeah, it's always going to be about you. And the word you, the why you. Yeah, what are you doing? What's on your list? Perhaps we can digest the message better with an analogy that we all agree on. And that analogy is that my favorite one, and one that I use, my mantra for my company, is that life is about going from one puzzle to the next. You're either a small, medium, or large piece of every puzzle in each of your family, social, or business relationships. Yet, no matter what puzzle piece size you see yourself as, without you, the puzzle is incomplete. So remember, if you're talking about your life, you could be the nucleus of that puzzle, which means that you have to be patient, not violent. See, that's why value outdoes violence. If you're the nucleus of your puzzle, you value your life, then you will be patient, not violent, and going against what somebody else is saying, because you're saying, well, I understand what they have to say, and that's what they're going through. What can I do to help? What's on my list already? And you have to believe that all things work together for the goodness of God. See, a lot of people say it, but do you believe it? See, I believe it. All things work together for the good of God. And that's why I can be patient. And aren't you a part of that goodness? Aren't things working together for you? You're the goodness. So if all things are working together for the goodness of God, you're the nucleus of your puzzle. Have the patience. Value who you are as an individual so that you don't have to be violent as other people start to see your value and they want to move towards you. But they move towards you slowly. Think about putting the puzzle together again. See, use the analogy that works for us. Get the picture across. You put together a puzzle piece by piece and you put it together slowly. Sometimes you put this section together. You see some pieces, imagine you put that section together. And you say, okay, section, I'm going to come back to you because there's going to be a spot for you. And so that moves us to the first E, and that the next E, which is excellence. Excellence undoes egregiousness. And egregious is an adjective which means extraordinary in some bad way, glaring, flagrant, and using it in a sense, an egregious mistake, an egregious liar. Now, please don't waste space in this thread with putting who you think is lying in the thread. I'm not interested in you putting that in there. You'll only honor that they're on the top of your mind. See, every time you post against somebody you like, and there's a fine line there, but if you find yourself constantly posting about something or someone you dislike, actually they are on the top of your mind, and you're honoring them more than you're taking them down, if that's what you mean, if that's what your purpose is to do. So it's important that you not keep that person on top of the mind. See, that's what we do when we recycle negativity, ignorance, and fear, because that's what we're doing. We're recycling negativity, ignorance, and fear. And in the process of doing that, we're honoring them. See, but so ask yourself, are you telling the truth? See, I don't need you to put the liars' names in the thread. I need you to ask yourself, are you telling the truth? And more importantly, are you being honest with yourself? Are you being honest with yourself? Are you making decisions based on popular demand or influence? Or are you thinking about how you feel and what you need to do to correct or happily project that feeling? You see, practice does not make perfect. It fuels excellence. Excellence does not mean fault-free. It means free from focusing on your faults so that you can move to the R and the Y in everything, where the R stands for recall, outdoes regret. Because we remember how long we prayed for something, right? 8 times out of 10, that prayer doesn't manifest the way that we wanted it to, or the way we envisioned it would. And in that moment, when we had that prayer, in that moment when we prayed for that thing and it manifested, we took action based on what we thought we should do. So why would you regret that? See, you prayed for something showed up, but it didn't show up the way you wanted it to be. But you said, yeah, but you know what? I think this is the answer to my prayer. I'm going to go with this. Whether it was a person, a job, a situation, a relationship in terms of and I just said a job, but a team that you joined, whatever that decision was, you made that decision based on the best information you had that you could make that choice. So why would you now regret that? Instead, I want to say to you, recall who you were. And here, you hear how a lot of people say, I'm sorry, you want to recall who you were, but you want to forgive yourself. I know a lot of people like to ask you, what would you tell your 10-year-old self and expect you to show, and then they expect you to show them a different path? What would you tell your 10-year-old self now? If you could go back and they expect you to tell them a different path. Here's what I would tell my 10-year-old self. Sporty, good one. Someday that will land you on Facebook Live, sharing your message of faith and reminding people to be positive as they recall the storms they went through, which could not be avoided, to create who they need to be toward completing this puzzle of pride and passion that we call life. If I could go back to my 10-year-old self, I'd say, keep doing what you're doing, Sporty. This is who you are. Ladies and gentlemen, I know it's a tough choice and we've had tough times in our lives, but if you go back and change your action, it doesn't mean that the road that you're going down is going to be a better road for you. It means different things will happen. There will be a different outcome based on the choice that you make. But guess what? You're still here. So therefore, that wasn't the absolute worst choice that you could have made, because you're still alive. Had you made another choice, you could be gone already. And I have to give you an absolute description there, because that's what we have to realize sometimes, is that, the choices that we make have kept us alive. So why beat ourselves up and decide that we didn't make a good choice? Recognize that it was a good choice based on the information that you had to make that choice at the time. And once you made that choice, that is the reason that you're still here. And so you can now choose to go back and regret that choice, or you can choose to recall that choice and say, you know what? The reason I made that choice is because this is who I was. This is where I was in my life. And that was to me, that was the best choice that I had. It was the best way I could go. Why would I beat myself up when I had to go through a maturing process? Okay. And then the why is you. Now, why did I have you in the first everything, where I said we were going to, God love undoes everything, and I had why in that first line of things that he needed to undo, because God's love does need to undo you. See, that's that maturity that I'm talking about. God's love needs to undo who you were so that you can become who you are. And then see, you outdo yourself when you accept and acknowledge your position on what I call the implementation crew. Because only God is on the planning committee. While only God is on the planning committee. In other words, everything in your life is a result of God being in your life, as far as I'm concerned. I found an old message, and I'll just share a small portion of it. But it said, the next time you feel like God can't use you, remember the following people. Noah was a drunk. Abraham was too old. And by the way, the reason I'm saying I'm sharing partial message, because there were a lot of other names in it that if you're not really familiar with the Bible, you won't recognize what those people did. But these names, I think, are the ones that people are pretty familiar with in the Bible, and they may have an idea of how it's saying how God used them. Okay, so Noah was a drunk. Abraham was too old. Joseph was abused and abandoned. Moses wasn't good at public speaking. Samson had long hair and was a womanizer. Rahab was a prostitute. David had an affair and was a murderer. Job went bankrupt. John the Baptist ate bugs. Peter denied Christ 3 times. The disciples fell asleep while praying, and Lazarus was dead. So the next time that you think God can't use you, think of some of those people and recognize that you don't know what God has planned for you or someone in your life. What you do know is that it won't come out in a clear path. Therefore, the testimonies have to undo trials. Because you thought you were having a bad experience going through unfair floods. See, you thought you were having a bad experience going through an unfair flood. That was your trial. When in fact, and in retrospect, and when we recollect, you were in training for what I call your Esther moment. Esther, for such a time as this. And that this has come several times. Pick one. Pick a storm. Pat your back. Trust your track record. You've had a lot of Esther moments for such a time as this. Oh man, you know what? This is going on with me. But now that I think about it, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have made it to this. And because I got through that, I can now see that I'm going to get through this. Pick a storm. Pat yourself on the back. Trust your track record. You were put in place for such a time as this. Now that you know what this is, don't regret it, just recollect it and give yourself a smile. And that moves us to the H, because happiness outdoes hatred. And hatred, we're going to look at the root word of hatred, which is hate. H-A-T-E, hurt attached to expectations. See, and these are expectations. Usually when we have false expectations of who someone is, we say that we hate them. Expectations of who someone else was or is are usually unfulfilled Because what happens is we don't trust ourselves enough not to believe that another person has responsibility for our personal happiness. Happiness outdoes hatred. When we recognize that no one else has responsibility for our personal happiness over us. But you have to believe that. You have to believe that and not believe that they are in charge of your happiness. If you're happy with who you are, what someone else does is just who they are. Didn't we already talk about empathy, value, and recalling? See, if you're happy with who you are, then all someone else can do is be who they are. And that's just who it is. There's no need for you to get upset and angry about that. Why not celebrate the decision that they help you make? See, when something, I have a poem called I Miss Me, and it says, a liar reminded me to tell the truth. Why not just celebrate that ignorance or whatever it was that that person did in your life? Celebrate that helped you make a decision. And the decision was to minimize their piece of the puzzle in your life. Minimize. See, maybe you had them as a large piece of the puzzle. Maybe you had them as a medium, and you need to reduce them to a small. And you don't have to go large to small. Maybe you need to move them from being a large piece of your puzzle to a medium. But it's your puzzle piece. And now you get to celebrate, man, so-and-so is such and such like this. I need to change the puzzle piece, the impact that they're having on the front row of my life, because not everybody deserves a front row in your life. But then it begs the question, are you on stage? Are you the star in your life, or are you just a backup player or a backup character? You have to be your star. Again, we talked about that nucleus of the puzzle. So that's what you want to do. And that moves you to the insight, where the insight outdoes the ignorance, or insight undoes the ignorance. You see, ignorance doesn't have to mean stupid. A lot of times we hear ignorance, and when we talked about racism, the ignorance, the stupidity, the mentality, but ignorance does not have to mean stupid. It can just mean that there's something that you don't or didn't know. You were ignorant, and you're still ignorant. There's something that you don't know, and there was something that you didn't know. All that meant was that you were just ignorant to that fact. Now that you know where that puzzle piece goes, put it to the side and wait to see what it connects for you. And that's that puzzle piece of that person, that expectation you have of that person. Put that puzzle piece to the side. Remember, we're celebrating the decision that they helped us make. Put that puzzle piece to the side and then wait to see what it connects for you. Because it is about you. When you understand your pleasure, when you understand your pleasure and patience, because that's what you have to do. You have to have pleasure. And I love being patient. And you have to make sure that you are patient. And I'm enjoying my patience. That moves you to the end. Nurturing outdoes negativity. Because what you do is you take and you spend the time being positive instead of acting positive. You see the difference? There's a difference in being positive and acting positive. In the Bible, we hear where Jesus said, throw the seeds. He said, throw the seeds. He didn't say aim them. In fact, you have to wait for the fourth option that he offered before you act. When he was talking to the farmers and he said, throw the seeds, he guaranteed that some will land on hard ground. He guaranteed that some will land in thorns. He guaranteed that some will land on shallow soil. And then the fourth option is that he guaranteed that some will land in fertile ground and then produce a harvest. Fourth option. See, he gave you remember I tell you I like to put the negative and close with the positive? Yeah, so he guaranteed for three things that you really don't want, but you can't avoid. So he guaranteed that fourth option. That's the patience that you have to have in making sure that you get through. So are you taking care of the most essential piece in your puzzle, which is you, so that you can value what the other pieces mean? if you take care of how valuable you are, you can value the other pieces. You're an essential piece of your puzzle. Without you, the puzzle is incomplete. And that moves us to the last letter, which is the G. And that reminds us that grace undoes greed. And greed, by the way, greed is not reserved. Greed is not reserved for who you would consider bad people. When we lose sight of our brilliance, we lose sight of our need to share. Remember, even as the nucleus of the puzzle, you need the other pieces to connect and come get you, which is not the same as completing you. See, it's a lot of times, oh, you complete me. Yeah, that was in the movie. Okay. But as the other pieces come together, they come to get you. They don't come to complete you. You complete the puzzle. You can have all those pieces together, but it ain't like they come together. It's not, no, you could take that last piece of the puzzle out and then put it back in. That's what completes the puzzle. And grace adds all of these other letters and lessons up to make sure that you see yourself as an essential tool in this life. So what I want to do, I once posted a meme, and you're going to see it in your feed. It says, the battle belongs to the Lord, yet sometimes you are his most important weapon. So you have to take care of you, because the battle belongs to the Lord, but sometimes you are his most important weapon. Are you ready to allow him to use you for God's love to undo everything? To make sure that the grace undoes the greed? That's what you want to be able to do. You want to make sure that the empathy undoes the evil. The value outdoes the violence. The excellence undoes the egregiousness. The recall outdoes the regret. You can outdo yourself when you believe in who you are. Testimonies undo trials. Happiness outdoes hatred. Insight undoes ignorance. Grace undoes greed. And so I close with this poem from my book. And the poem is, Thy Will Be Done. Thy will be done. Say that with me. That wasn't too hard, was it? Now try believing it. Let me get those words. Now try believing it. I remember being down on my knees, muttering those 4 words. See, because we learn them in the Lord's Prayer. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. It's not hard. I remember being down on my knees, muttering those 4 words and thinking that after the kingdom arrived, all God's plans would be fulfilled. I remember thinking that. Now I know it. And what I know is that the kingdom has arrived. And the mysterious ways many have considered a part of God's handiwork, because people say God works in mysterious ways. The mysterious ways many have considered a part of God's handiwork are nothing more than the countless blessings in his crystal clear plans that we are just not aware of. So this new road we take to healing begins with our latest testimony of appreciation for life. A testimony that will last at least till we get out this door and back to cursing drivers who cut us off, rolling our eyes at a teenage outfit, or blaming a small tree for a fire. A testimony born from tragedy that questions Thy's will, W-I-L-L. What is the Lord's lesson? In other words, questioning God. How will I get through this one? When will you lift this burden? Where will I go from here? Why me? And his answer will be, are you done yet? You see, done is D-O-N-E. Delivering my omnipotent news every day. Are you done yet? Or do you profess faith only in convenient retrospect? And this is God talking to us. I schedule this day for you because Job is no longer available. I schedule this day because I love you. And this new level is not made to have you question me, but to help you understand me. Understand that what I want is for you to love me and live by me every day. How? Anger is controllable and will only blind you from the blessing I woke you up with today. When? This pain is temporary, yet temporary can last a long time. Where? Loss is necessary and always precedes growth. Why? Understand that even if you don't, I'll always love you. I'm done delivering my omnipotent news every day. And so I'm done with this message. Everything, God's love undoes everything. Are you making sure that He undoes everything in your life and puts it back together the way you need it to be? Because He is doing all He can to make sure that He does. Thank you, and God bless you. Now, Friday's message will feature and be called First Friday, because I found a news clipping that I saved from June 27th, this Saturday, that will be the anniversary, June 27th, 1989. I found a picture that I had saved. Let me see if it can show. Ha! This is a picture that I had saved in my scrapbook, and it's a first in baseball history. Cito Gaston was the manager of the Toronto Blue Jays, and Frank Robinson, the manager of the Baltimore Orioles, shared in the first time that two Black managers opposed one another. So that's some history that's coming up this Saturday. So that's why Friday, I'll call Friday First Friday, and I'll think of some first. So if you like to be a co-author, then what you want to do is drop a first in the thread. What are some firsts that you remember that you want me to co-author? Put it in the thread, or I'll get it into the message. Or guess what? Maybe we'll end up discussing it. We got options. This is our world. And so remember, if you like a copy of today's poem, or if you like to be on my mailing list for these broadcasts, because I send out a monthly fun letter and occasional inspirational messages and these broadcasts, what I want you to do, I've got a new place for you to contact me, and I mentioned it, but let me go on and put it in this thread. Dun, 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 dun. Send your request to sporty@sportyking.com. I finally got that set straightened out. I'm very happy to announce that. So if you like a copy of the poem, send it to, or if you want to be on my mailing list, send it to sporty@sportyking.com. If you like a copy of the book, that book was called A Poet in Every Prophet. You can get that at my website, sportyking.com. And then while you're there, you get to see some of the, because I've got a total of 8 books. Did you know that? So let's get to know one another better by doing that. But meanwhile, I want to thank you for one thing that I do know that you know, and you show me that by joining on this broadcast, and that's GLUE. God's love undoes everything. Make sure that you keep your life together with glue. Keep it together. Don't worry about getting over. Over and out. Ciao.